Hello, everyone. So first, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for spending a with us. Really excited and really happy to have you all for this very relevant and timely and what will be a very engaging event. So first things first, just to introduce myself, my name is Anthony Shu. I go by he, him pronouns, and I get the privilege of working on the National NAAAP Pride team as the secretary. At the local NAAAP level, I lead external relations for the Minnesota chapter. So that's who I am and my relationship to NAAAP. And before I get going any further, first I want to call out Molson Coors as a very generous sponsor. So thank you for the support for the NAAAP Pride program. Anyway, so here's an agenda. We'll go through a welcome. I'll share a little bit more about NAAAP, and then and then we'll jump into the event, and then have some Q&A portion at the end. So that's what we're looking out for here today. Setting some ground rules. We will have everyone muted. Just out of respect for the attendees and the presenters. But we will keep the chat box open, and we will be queuing questions for the presenters and the panelists. And so please feel free to post your questions or just share a little more about yourself in the chat room. You can feel free to have your video on if you wish to do so. It's always nice to just see other faces, especially during this shelter-in-place time. So feel free to do so. And the most important thing is really to just be kind. We want this to be a really engaging and potentially hitting on controversial topics, but I want to reiterate that this should be a safe space, free from judgment, harassment, or any hate speech of that kind. And so if we do see that, we will boot you from the room. So, but we want to make sure we have good, productive conversation here. So, but please feel free to share, and just remember, be kind overall. So NAAAP, just in a nutshell, our vision is to be the premier leadership organization for Asian American professionals, valuing leadership, education, accountability, and diversity. Just to highlight some of the key programs the NAAAP organization offers, we have a Women in NAAAP program, the NAAAP Pride program, which is why you're all here. We have a newly launched self-care and wellness program, and there's the Employee Resource Group program. You can visit naap.org for more information. There's a lot of great stuff happening, and there's chapters all over the country. So there most likely is a NAAP chapter near you. A little bit about us, the NAAP Pride team. So we're really here to empower, educate, engage, and celebrate specifically the Asian American LGBTQ plus community. That's a very unique intersection in a community that we really want to make sure also has a voice at the table within the broader conversation. And so if you want to see anything specific from us, feel free to visit pride.naap.org. We'll have a lot of programming out there, and programming such as today's event. We want to really reserve as much time as we can for the actual panel. So I want to just at least jump to next month really quick and just give a highlight of what's to come next month before we jump into today's programming. But we will have a program on serving leadership realness from the world of drag. Very unique event that we're really excited to put on, but we have Gia Gunn and Wong Newton, well-known names in the drag world. We hope you will be able to attend, and keep this in mind for next month. We will send out an Eventbrite after today's event, but I just wanted to at least give a plug-in now, and but I want to make sure we shift the focus back to today's event, but I want to share that out there. So on to today's programming. So one thing that we really recognize is important as an Asian American community is given light of the tragedies around George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and countless other names that unfortunately just keep coming. We really, really, really believe as an ally that it was time to really give the Black community an opportunity to amplify their voices. Not to say that other voices shouldn't be heard, but right now is really the time we feel like we wanted to step back and really give the Black community that time and space. And so given the nature of our organization being an Asian American focused organization, and also it being Pride Month in June, being June and Pride Month, we really wanted to hit a very unique intersection of all three of those realms. You know, there's a lot of relevancy to all three of these different groups, and it's really important to build allyship. And so we thought that having guests that hit all three of these intersections would be a really unique perspective in, you know, how us in these different groups can ally together in creating change and just creating an inclusive environment for all. So as I was saying, it's about amplifying other voices. And so I will shut myself off now. And I want to introduce Vanessa Vaughn West, who will be leading the panel discussion. So I will let Vanessa take it away. So,
excellent. Thank you so much, Anthony. It is my pleasure and honor to be with you all tonight. And I've been looking forward to this evening and this discussion all week long. So my name is Vanessa Vaughn West. As Anthony shared, my pronouns are she, hers, and hers. I am an African-American cisgendered woman. I am a mom and a wife, and I have 2 biracial children under the age of 8. It's my passion. Really, one of my passions is understanding and championing diversity and working within the realm of equity and diversity and inclusion. Throughout my career in the nonprofit, government, and private sectors, I've really worked to amplify voices and opportunities for immigrants, LGBTQ+ community members, religious and ethnic minorities, as well as other underrepresented groups. In my current role, I lead diversity and inclusion for Lathrop GPM, which is a national law firm headquartered in Kansas City and Minneapolis. And in that role, I really work to promote belonging throughout our firm and beyond. So again, it is really quite an honor to be here, and I'm very pleased to be your moderator this evening. Before we get into the content of today's webinar, I do want to remind everyone that today's event is being recorded for on-demand access for those who are unable to join us. And we do very much encourage you to put questions into the chat. We've got some great folks who are going to be collecting those questions and comments throughout the event this evening, and we will make time at the end to respond to those comments. But I know that sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking to type that first question, so I just encourage everyone to write their name, their pronouns, and where they're from into the chat right now so we can see who's here with us tonight and welcome everybody. So that'll get everybody kind of started and populating the chat. While you're doing that, I just want to give a nod to our fantastic panelists who are here with us. They will be sharing some unique perspectives and personal experiences this evening. Some of those stories and some of those reflections will be helpful tips. And some might even cause you to have personal reflection or to examine assumptions and your own personal unconscious bias. Our hope today is that you walk away from today's webinar with new information, that you are able to hear new perspectives and maybe to have some additional understanding that inspires you to continue learning and growing about these topics. We hope that you will also leave empowered and as an advocate for marginalized groups, recognizing that everyone, all of us, have a role in creating a world where all people can live and work authentically. So before I turn it into the panelists, I want to just say hello. I see some folks are here from Minnesota, the Twin Cities, from California. We have some folks from Washington State and Kansas City. So welcome to you all. And now let's take a moment to meet our panelists. I will begin by inviting all of them to tell us a little bit about themselves, their backgrounds, both professional and familial, as well as their pronouns. So Will, I will begin with you.
You have to unmute.
Unmute yourself.
Okay. This is not my first time, is it? Thank you, Vanessa, for the intro. And thank you to NAAAP and NAAAP Pride for hosting this event. I think it's an awesome opportunity for us to connect and really talk about issues that are really at heart here. My name is Will Brown, and my pronouns are he, his, and him. And I am the owner of Will Brown Interiors, which is a boutique interior design studio here in the Kansas City area. And I focus on empty nesters and helping them kind of redefine their homes. And I use feng shui principles to help create sort of refreshed environments so that they can get ready for the next chapter of their lives. And I just have been in business a little over a year. My career has spanned over 20 plus years. I worked for two Fortune 500 companies, one in the Kansas City area, Hallmark, and then also up in Minneapolis for Target. And it's actually great. I see some Target faces here, so that's exciting as well. So I have been active on the social front as well as getting involved with community, and I was a board member for the Mid-America LGBT Chamber of Commerce here in Kansas City. I served a term there. And so what I'm most excited about is that I was able to influence and help them get set up with a diversity and inclusion council there, and really started to infuse more diversity into their board. So that's a little bit about me, and thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself.
Excellent. Thank you. Next, we'll turn it to Calvin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Calvin Quattlebaum. I'm actually in Kansas City. I go by he, him, and his. I currently work with the veterans at the VA hospital here in Kansas City as an IT specialist, IT analyst. And I spent 27 years in the Army, retired about 2 years ago. And I currently, I'm married to my wonderful husband of 5 years this month. And we've been together for about 17 of those years. And also have 2 daughters from a previous marriage. They live in Omaha. And I'm just happy to be here with everybody.
Excellent. Well, happy belated anniversary. And we're happy to have you too. And last but not least, we're going to turn it over to Spencer. Welcome, Spencer. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for this space. And I'm seeing so many faces that I haven't seen in quite some time. So thank you, NAAAP, for having this event. I miss all of you. My name is Spencer Black. My pronouns are he, him, his. I reside in the Queen City, Cincinnati, Ohio. And I see some people from Charlotte, so we can have that as a side conversation later. Here, I serve as the Deputy Organizing Director with the Democratic National Committee. I also am on the Workplace Equality Committee for our local HRC, or Human Rights Campaign chapter for Greater Cincinnati. In that role, we work with not only local ERGs and BRGs to work on the Corporate Equality Index that HRC sends out, and most people on this call are probably familiar with, but also to give those employees resources and a space outside of work where they can find community. I'm happy to say that in March, I was elected to serve on the local Democratic Central Committee in my home district, historic West 4th. So I'm very happy to say, the best title I'll probably ever have in my life is a public servant. And I firmly love the role, and I'm happy to be in it, and also happy to be here with you this evening. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your service as well. I want to begin the conversation by really talking a little bit and helping define intersectionality. So that's a term that we use to describe this event. And just wanted to be sure that we were familiar with it and upon what it is based. So if you're scratching your head about what that really means, it's totally fine. We're going to talk about that now. So it's a term that was originally coined by a professor and social therapist. Her name is Kimberly Crenshaw. And really, she defined it as a framework for conceptualizing a person or a group of people, or even a social problem as affected by a number of discriminations or disadvantages. And so it takes into account people's overlapping identities. So their identities and their experiences in order to understand the complexity of prejudices and how they impact their lives. So in other words, it's really a way to define and to list multiple sources of oppression, such as race or class or gender identity, sexual orientation, as we'll be talking about today, and how those identifying markers impact how someone experiences life. And the recognition that those things are compacted together to have a collective impact on someone. So for example, I am a Black person and I am a woman, and together those things kind of come to an intersection to help define multiple identities that I have. So with that kind of general overview about intersectionality, I want to begin with our first question. And this question is, what does having intersecting identities mean to you, and how has it impacted your ability to fit in or not fit in? Spencer, it looks like you want to take that first one.
Sure. So it's wonderful to have all these different layers to a person. But having all of those different layers does kind of come at a cost at times, because you never feel whole in one certain section of your being. And when it comes down to being the fiber of your essence or the entire being of you, it's hard to suss out what do I take more serious, or what do I belong here. Often we always just kind of want to plot ourselves. And when you are layered, it's just different. It's just very difficult sometimes to kind of figure out who you are or where you fit in or what that might look like.
Will, I see you nodding as Spencer talked about those multiple layers.
Yes. So I'll just add on to what Spencer started. I would totally agree. I think for me, I didn't know what half of my ethnicity sort of the background was. So I'm mixed. My father's Black. My birth mother is Korean. And my parents divorced when I was still an infant. And then my dad remarried. And so my stepmother is also, she's Black. So I grew up in a Black household, essentially, in that culture. And so that is all I knew, and that's kind of what I grew into. But I also felt that there was a part of me that I was missing. And every time I looked in the mirror, I could tell that I was different. So part of my discovery, I think, as I was growing up, was to figure out that other side of me. There were certain conversations we didn't have in the house growing up, and part of that was really about my Asian side of the family. And so that left me kind of with a sort of a hole, I think. I would talk to my sister about it. And so, she would explain things because she's a little older. So she would let me know about, our birth mother and that sort of thing. But we really couldn't talk about that. So I felt like I struggled in my early years, especially in school. I come from a military background, Army brat. So we traveled every few years and we were always in a different city. We would be, I would be dropped into the school system in the middle of the year, which is always difficult. So, social circles have already been created, and then this new kid drops in who looks like no one else. And then, you get all the fingers pointed. Who are you? What are you? And having to sort of fend off and try to defend myself the best I could. So that was part of my experience. I think now as an adult, and I've processed and unpacked a lot of that through years of therapy, I'm very proud of my my biracial background, and I really do embrace both sides. And so that's just been a little bit about what that experience kind of looked and felt like for me.
Calvin, what about you and your upbringing? Was there a moment, or perhaps multiple moments, when you had the feeling of being different, not fitting in, and how did your biracial identity play into that?
Absolutely. I grew up also as a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force, and that's how he met my mom in the Philippines. So, but growing up, I really didn't have that concept of I'm different. Because everybody on the base was different, and we just never thought of that. But as I got older, I learned to embrace my diversity, being biracial, and to me, it felt like an advantage, because I wasn't just one ethnicity or another ethnicity. I had different cultures that I can pull from to help me through life. But at the same time, with that being said, I had the same issue that Spencer and Will was having to deal with. I felt like I was never Black enough, and I was never Asian enough. So it was always. So I tried to make sure that the groups that I did hang out with was a blend of people. I never felt comfortable hanging out with all my Black friends at one time, and I never felt comfortable hanging out with my Asian friends all the time. And so I learned growing up that by having a diverse group of friends together made me felt more myself.
That's great. And thank you for sharing about how you almost tried to compartmentalize aspects of your life because you never really felt like one was a perfect fit. And I think that that's important to recognize that everyone is an individual, and there's probably not going to be that box that is a perfect fit for everybody. And so that's why it's even more important that as a community of people that we are inclusive and welcoming to everyone. I wonder, as we're talking about upbringing, if anybody might have examples of how they eventually were able to navigate through that difference, maybe how they developed feelings of resilience just based on that differentiation. I know, Spencer, you shared an interesting story about how I think you identified with other kids who were different in the cafeteria growing up and kind of formed your own group, or maybe that was Will who said that, but I think maybe you guys could share that story. I think it's a very interesting one.
Yeah, so for me, anxiety, it was always around lunchtime, I think, and especially high school. Lunchtime, you get your lunch, you go through that cafeteria line, and then after you pay and you go out those doors and you're looking at all the kids and they're sitting at the tables and there are little groups and you're wondering, okay, where am I going to sit today? Because the Black kids are over on this side and they're doing their thing, and then the white kids are over there, and you're just kind of navigating your way through, trying to look for an open spot or something to sit down. And then it's that sort of, if I sit by myself, then does that mean that I'm less than, that I look like a loser? So oftentimes I would take my lunch tray and go sit outside or in the hall or something. And that would sort of be my way of kind of dealing with it. But what I ended up doing just as a coping is I would look for the other kids who were also kind of seated by themselves or off in the hallway by themselves. And I would just go and kind of sit down. And as it turned out, a lot of them were also different, you know, ethnicity-wise, culturally. So I kind of humorously kind of dubbed us the Third World Club because, you know, I had friends who were from Pakistan, from Korea, Nigeria, China. So we became sort of that group that leaned on each other in a way for support, and especially during, you know, those awkward moments throughout, you know, those school years, which can be kind of challenging. So.
Yep. Some of you also shared experiences about kind of having to come out about your background, your race, and how that was a different experience than coming out maybe regarding your sexuality. Talk a little bit about those processes and how they differ depending on the group that you're with.
Well, if I could say something, for me, you know, it felt like with just like when you're coming out to somebody to tell them you're gay, it's not just a one-time thing. You're always having to tell somebody that you're always coming out regardless. But then, you know, when you go into a new room and you meet new people, you have that, you could feel their questions of, what are you? And they try to be subtle about it. They kind of find out, they want to ask, where am I from? And I always tell them I'm from Texas because that's where my dad retired. But then they just kind of like, oh, okay. So then I let them off the hook and tell them I'm half Black, half Filipino. And before this, I had more hair and it was straight. So that's what kind of confused a lot of people because I had features that made me look Black, but then the hair just kind of threw everybody off because it was straight. So, but yeah, it was always something that I could tell people were looking to find out. Even at work, they ask, what am I? And so I have to.
Or where are you from, really? Or yeah, are you really from here? And I think that a lot of groups, unfortunately, have experienced that type of what I would consider to be a microaggression. And there's a hurtfulness that comes with that. I can remember growing up, you know, people said things like, well, you don't talk in a certain way, so I didn't know that you were Black, or I expected you to act differently. And so it's really interesting how those stereotypes really impact people's perceptions about who we are and our identities and what those groups can be like. We have a question here that is in the chat. Folks are wondering if it was a bother to be asked about your racial background. Is that a subject that you would have preferred that people stayed away from? Or how would you best prefer people navigate those waters?
It didn't bother me. I've just kind of, I don't know, I just kind of gotten used to being asked about it. But what I did when people did ask, I would go ahead and tell them I was half Black, half Filipino. My parents were in the military. So I kind of give them a brief history of who I am. So that way they know I'm not just Filipino, I'm not just Black. And that kind of breaks the ice so that we can just get past that and move on to getting to know each other.
Yeah, I would add on to that if possible. It's like people always want to figure out, how did you happen? Because I don't see that every day. Or what happened to make you? It led me to, taking those DNA tests and figuring out, what am I? Like, what happened in the world to kind of create me? And I would say how people ask you about your racial background, it's all about the intent. I've been asked a few different ways. One is saying, what are you, why are you here, kind of way. And another one being like really inquisitive, like, wow, want to know what's up. So I would obviously say it's just about the intentionality. And, for me, I found out I'm very white. The majority of my background is Caucasian, but what do I look like going into a room and saying I'm a white man? I would say the most stressful I feel sometimes is filling out that employee card, because I've got a lot of boxes I want to put in there. But if I would just put, if I even put the one where I'm the most of, it really wouldn't be accepted. So I would say all about intentionality about how people particularly ask you about your racial mix-up.
So I'm interested. Has anybody ever had a snarky day, like when someone asked you, how did you come to be? What are you? Like, love brought me here. Love is the reason I am here, and love is the reason that we're all here. When you said your answer, I just thought, well, I'm here the same reason why everyone else is here. So I think someone mentioned the workplace, and we definitely want to bring that into the conversation today because, we have the demographics surveys where we're asked to check those awful boxes, and thankfully nowadays we're able to check more than one in many cases. But there are other instances in the workplace that can either help us to feel like we belong or can hinder that experience of belonging. And so I ask our panelists, what contributes to a work environment where you really feel like you're being seen and like your perspectives matter? What are some of those things that employers can add to their workplace and make sure happen so that we can all recognize and value the diversities that we bring?
Well, I'll just kind of give you a couple of perspectives that I've experienced. I was fortunate that I had a really great boss. My last position, she was probably my boss for over 10 years. So we really got to know each other really well. And we really kind of learned from each other. She learned from me, and just from, teaching moments, learning moments, sharing moments that might happen, during our status updates. I might recall something that might have happened in a meeting or something that was said, either how it was said or who might have said it, and just kind of to give context and explaining what that felt like, or how it was received. And so I was fortunate that, she really kind of listened to some of that and took that into perspective. And I would notice that she would, adjust the conversation or be more inclusive. And I think part of it for me was I wasn't looking necessarily for special treatment or anything like that. It was really just acknowledgement and feeling included. And I think it was more thinking about different work styles and different ways people just are. Some people are more extroverted, some are more introverted. But for me, it was more about no matter who you are and where you're from, just ensuring that your voice is heard and that you have a presence in the room, and just to ask. And sometimes you have to just kind of be purposeful in asking certain individuals to share their perspective. I think that was something that I learned because I am more introverted, so I'm more in my head sometimes. So I might have a thought, may not always share it during a meeting. Sometimes you get sort of labeled as being aloof or not engaged, and that it wasn't certainly always the case. So, part of it was my boss, exchanging with me, it's like, I know you're an introvert. Sometimes you're thinking, but you need to find opportunities to speak up, because when you don't, then people are making calls on that as well. So, I really appreciated that exchange, and I also learned to find mentors who were in different areas of the company that I work with. One of the greatest things I think I can say about my days at Target is that you get a mentor the day you walk through that door. And it's so great because you have someone literally right there with you who will help you navigate kind of the first days, at a new job and a new role. And then you can start to find your own mentors. But so from that, I learned that it's always good to have mentors, and not just one, several mentors in different areas that you aren't in. And I think that that's important as professionals, so that you can really kind of bounce things off of, things that might have happened, learning opportunities, to get a different perspective from someone maybe outside of your area. So they could be peers. I had peers, but then I also had leaders that were a little higher up than I was. And it was really helpful, and it helped me kind of keep my head straight and really think about other perspectives. So I wasn't always in my head, and I wasn't thinking or overthinking or overanalyzing things that might have been said and I might have taken the wrong way, and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And especially for mentioning, in addition to the role of a manager, what peers can do. I think a lot of times we look for our managers, and it's important for them to be inclusive and to set the tone for inclusive leadership. But really, there are actions that we as team members can take to ensure that those who might not have their voices elevated have the ability to be seconded in meetings, or to make sure that their voices are heard, especially those who are diverse. So thank you for that. Any other comments from our panelists on that question?
I would say just at the DNC personally, we have an ouch and an oops kind of motto or statement. Ouch, when something someone else says is offensive or rubs you the wrong way or makes you uncomfortable. Don't sit with the uncomfort, say ouch and give your reason. And say oops, I'm sorry, be earnest about your apology. And we also follow that up with learning. So we take that moment and capsulize it, make sure everyone's good, but then also follow up with why is that hurting them? Why is that a history of hurt, or what does that actually look like? We're not about cancel culture here within our company, at least. It's about bringing people to the fold and having them evolve and become better people through learning.
Yeah, I love that ouch and oops. That's really great. And I also think that you've given us the perfect segue to our next question, and that is related to learning. So as we know, right now is a time in our country that some are even calling a great awakening as it relates to people's understanding about racism and some of the institutional racism and police brutality. There's an awareness of Black Lives Matter, really resulting from Mr. Floyd's death and other events that have been taking place for decades and generations. So as we think about recent events, I'm interested to know how those have impacted you, what your journey has been over the past few weeks, and just thoughts on how allies can help us move forward. That's a lot to unpack since our
yeah. Yeah. Well, let's see. I've been really. I try to stay off of social media for the past few weeks because it was just so discouraging. And then to see the news, I made it a rule for myself that I would watch the morning news for about 2 hours, and then I was done for the day. I didn't want to see any more negativity. I just, because I hear it on the news and in social media, and my brain just can't handle any more of it, because then I'll stay up all night thinking about where we're at as a society. Growing up as a military brat, that's where a lot of my experience with life started, was being in the military. I knew I was going to be in the military. So when I joined, I don't know, I was always used to seeing these diverse people in one location. It was never, oh, we have a unit of all white men, we have a unit of all black men, a unit of Asian men. It was never just one class of people. It was always a blend. So I was always used to being surrounded by different cultures. I always felt that the Army was more my family, because they've always been there for me. When my mom passed away, I was only 20 years old, and the Army was the one that supported me. I ended up being the guardian of my 3 sisters, who were all under the age of 18. And here I am as a 20-year-old I felt like I didn't have a real support channel, but the Army always was there for me. And for me to not be able to have that support channel, I wouldn't be where I was now. So I don't know. I just wish everybody could get along. It's just we're all on this one planet. This is the only planet we have, and it's just so hurtful that we're not able to understand our diversity. And it's just, I don't know. I just wish, I know we could do better. We could do better.
Yeah, it's kind of confounding that given so much difference in the world and the difference that has existed over time, even with that difference, there's so much similarity if you really get down to it. And understanding those differences and the similarities, and taking the time to really to unpack that and spin with that would definitely make us stronger as as an overall community. Thank you for that vulnerability, Calvin. I really appreciate you sharing that. Wanted to throw it to some of our other panelists as well. For many of us, myself included, many of the realities that some folks are coming to today are things that we have experienced throughout our lives. And so, for me, I've had a multitude of emotions, from anger to hurt to frustration to, just almost impatience at times. And so I'm interested to know how the processing has been for you all, and just to get responses to my earlier question.
Yeah, I'll go next. It's been definitely an emotional roller coaster, and I do analyze. I'm definitely a thinker, so I think what it has done for me, it's brought up a lot of things that have happened just throughout my life, just incidences, experiences that in some ways, you kind of experience, you kind of try to move through that and keep going. I think I'm definitely more of a forward thinker, so I'm always thinking about what's next versus really sitting with the past or things that might have happened. But because of the intensity at which this has been, at us, it's really caused me to really think about specific things that have happened throughout my life. And one thing that I just was actually surprised how much it triggered. Can I share a story? Okay. So a friend of mine posted on social media, and his intent was absolutely meant to share and uplift, but it was an image of Mr. Rogers, and he's sharing pool time with this black man. I don't know if he was the mailman or something that was on the show, but there was, I think, in the news during that period that the show was on, there was civil unrest about blacks being able to swim in sort of together with whites. And so that triggered for me a really strong memory. So I think I was about eight or nine, maybe. My grandmother, she lives in a very small town. She lived in a very small town called Cuthbert, Georgia, which is very near to the Alabama border. It's a small town. If you think about, I always think of that In the Heat of the Night show, where you have that little town square with stores around the perimeter, and you've got that park in the middle, and then you've got that statue of some white leader, white general. It was that type of town. And very close off of the center square was a college called Andrews College. I don't know if it's still there, but it was a nicely curated lawn and everything. And they had this beautiful pool that was open in the summertime, and I could see kids swimming in it. So I just remember one year I was down visiting my grandmother for 2 weeks. All of the first cousins were down there. So we thought, oh my gosh, it's the perfect day to go swimming. So let's go swimming. And, we decided to go to the pool that we all pass every day and see kids swimming in. And so we grabbed our towels, and it was about a mile and a half walk to the pool from my grandmother's house, which, by the way, that saying from the wrong side of the tracks. Well, there was literally the railroad tracks that ran through the town, and all the middle class and upper class lived on one side, and the poor lived on the other side, and the blacks. So as a kid, I don't think about all of that, but, in retrospect, that was definitely that proverbial railroad track that literally separated. So we were having to go across those railroad tracks up to the swimming pool area. And when we got there, it was a lifeguard. He was a white lifeguard. I'll never forget. And, he took one look at us. It was probably like 7 or 8 of us, all black, different ages. I was probably amongst the youngest. And he said, "What are you all doing here? You all will not be swimming in this pool. This is not for you. If you want to swim, your pool is on the other side of town, but you are not swimming in this pool." And I'm saying it very nicely, but you get the idea. And so, the older cousins understood and, kind of corralled us to kind of go back and walk back. But I was more, and they were angry. I remember some of them were angry. And I was more confused than anything, because I had seen kids, and literally as he was even talking to us, I was like, but there are kids swimming in the pool. I don't understand. And so my older cousins were the ones that pointed out, it's because, you're not white, we're black. And I was like, so what? It's like, yeah, sometimes that will hold you back. And so that was the first time I realized it was a barrier. And so to really solidify this experience, we decided that we would go to the other pool, because, it was still hot and we were still wanting to swim. So we did. We found our way to the other side of the town, and literally there were all the brown and black kids in this pool. And, so on the one hand, it's like, we felt like we definitely belonged. But on the other hand, it's like, I just don't understand why we have to separate. And I remember asking some of the kids, it's like, why can't we swim in the other pool? And the other kids that were there were from the town. We were just visiting for a couple of weeks, so we weren't necessarily from there. But I just remember them kind of looking at me funny, saying, well, don't you know? It's like, that is we're not allowed there. We just don't do that. That's for the whites, and we're black, and so this is where we belong. And I just remember that just kind of left an indelible print in my head about difference, and how this, really kind of creates that barrier. And I just remember thinking, okay, there's got to be a different way. And I think, anytime I close my eyes and I go back to that moment, it just really takes me back. And so you never quite forget that. And I just think that, in some way, I wanted to transcend that color line. And it's just something that I always kind of go back to. So that was kind of my first experience with racism and difference. So just wanted to share that story.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that I don't know if others have stories that they want to share that are similar. It's important to note that even today, Will, it sounds like that experience continues to, if not impact you, be something that exists in the back of your mind. And many times we hear, whether it's in reference to historical wrongs or things that happen in other cities that may not happen where we're living, folks question, why is that such a big deal? Why does that matter to you? It didn't happen to you. This is an experience that did happen to you, but even those that don't, for example, George Floyd, those are things that have a proximal impact that is lasting and can impact how we interact and move forward and, perspectives over time. So,
yeah.
Go ahead, Spencer.
Oh, sure. That leads us into other stories. Like, my mother has a story like that. She passes as white, but people knew her in the town. And that was a total thing. I remember watching, I think it was the 2012 Olympics. It was, there was a black man who was part of the Team USA. And we've always just kind of heard that, like, oh, black people don't swim, blah, blah, blah. Those kind of like la-di-da, kind of like subtle racist comments. And it's because they would pour bleach in the water if we were in the swimming pool. They would take us out. So those stories that's something that I didn't even think about talking about. It just kind of came into my head. But to kind of touch back on how we're doing, or what has all of this kind of felt like? I am a person who gives advice better than I take it. And so I always say to people I manage or whatever, it's okay to not be okay. And I'm always that person ready and willing to have someone just fall apart and hold them up and work extra to make sure that their workload is taken care of. When you're managing people, it's hard to fall apart. And my particular job is politics. I can't escape it. My job is to fix it. And so, with our company, we've, obviously had more mental health days. We've tried to have these kind of open dialogue conversations. For a week at work, it felt like I was, back in my therapy sessions. It was cool. It was good. But we had to allow that to kind of be there because we can't escape into any other thing, because what's on the news is what we're dealing with. I would say, just to wrap it up, every time I've seen incidences that have continued to happen, it is like a wound that is being healed. It's got a great Band-Aid on it, and then it's ripped off again, and it's ripped off again. And sometimes I'm just looking to fall apart, but I can't because others are expecting me to just hold it together. And that's just kind of where I'm at. But it's not been easy lately. And they don't, sorry, what you just said a second ago was, oh, why, I don't know George Floyd. When I see George Floyd, I see my dad, I see my brother, I see my nephew. I just got a new baby nephew. He's like a week old. My goal for him is that when a police car pulls him over, that his body doesn't start to shake, and that he's not scared of what the outcome might be because he had a taillight out. So yeah, I don't know George Floyd. I don't know his family, but his story matters.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that. As we are thinking about kind of those struggles or those experiences and their kind of lifelong impact, does anybody else have a story that they would like to share? If not, I have a question about progress and Black visibility, Black, brown visibility within the LGBTQ movement. But I want to give a moment because I think this is important for us to just kind of sit with what we've heard and the vulnerabilities that we've heard with some of the recent examples. Okay. As I think some of you may have seen, there is a kind of an updated Pride flag that has been circulating that has not only the traditional rainbow colors, but it now has a kind of a triangle to the left that has, I believe it's Black, brown, and maybe the trans colors as well that have been added. And I think that this is an attempt to show progress, to show the intersectionality of these many movements. And I'm interested to know kind of how our panelists view that flag and more generally view the intersectionality of Black lives and the LGBTQ movement and any synergies that might be there. Spencer, would you like to take that?
Sure. So I think that when that flag came out was probably a couple of years ago. At the time, I was working for the Human Rights Campaign. And I think I had mixed emotions about when the flag came out. I didn't know what it was trying to do. And that's when I learned a lot of things, right? So the gay community would not be in the position that they are in if it wasn't for the trans community, as that flag looks, pushing them. Yeah. I have the ability to, I can deepen my voice, I can marry a woman, I can kind of assimilate into society. Trans people have to live out loud. And they have to make others, that's why they have to make the world change around them, to make the world accept them. So learning that we would not be here without trans women of color pushing us does us a disservice as allies and does a disservice to us as members of the LGBTQ community if we don't take that on face value, accept that, and run with it. So mixed feelings when the flag came out. Now I love it. Because I know that I would not be as loud as I am if it wasn't for people pushing us towards that direction. I see there's a link to the flag as well, which is important.
Yep.
If you haven't.
Yep, I just added that.
I think that it really does, to me, denote progress. I think my experience in the coming up through the gay community is that sometimes we can kind of judge ourselves and judge outwardly pretty hard ourselves. So, I remember, I've gone to the general Pride event here, but then there's also a Black Pride over here. And, kind of like wondering why is there a difference between the two, but really honoring that there is a difference between the two. And I think the flag really does represent that. And I'm excited to see visually how it's represented on the flag, because I think just adding more stripes can be a little confusing, but I think, to Spencer's point, this idea of movement is really visible in that new representation. And so I definitely welcome it. And I do think that while we are fighting the larger civil unrest that's happening, within the LGBT community too, we want to also make sure that we are staying on one accord and doing what we can to, push forward together and not in separate silos, which sometimes we have had a tendency to do.
Yep. And I'm glad you brought that up, because as we were prepping for this call, one of the things that we wanted to be sure to talk about are, I guess, some of those silos that have traditionally existed, not just between different racial groups and LGBT groups, but also specifically between the Asian community and other minorities sometimes. And so I know that a few of you had some thoughts on either what that experience has been like for you, or ways that we can make that better.
Well, just to kind of piggyback off of what I was just saying, I think understanding, well, first of all, I think it's really exciting that NAAAP is doing this, because it's a really interesting intersection to really have the Asian American community kind of want to collaborate and show solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. Because, if you look at history, there have been moments when we have stood in solidarity, and then there have been moments when we've had conflict. And I think a lot of those moments when we've had conflict, it's been due to, white institutions really kind of getting in there and trying to rip us apart. So, if you look at what's happening now with the Black Lives Matters, due to all of the oppression and the corruption within police and the government, and, how the Asian community is, having to battle with, with racism within their own community with COVID. Mm-hmm. I think that, there's that parallel that we can really, draw that says that we are in this together, and, let's build on the momentum that we once had in our own history. And let's put aside, some of those conflicts that we've had, because now is an opportunity for us to come together and recommit and reconnect so that we can get through this and build a better tomorrow in the way that we want it to be written, and not in the way that it's written for us. So,
exactly. I'm wondering, I want us to be sure to take a moment to revisit a little bit the workplace. This is a professional organization, and we talked a little bit about how we can create belonging and community within the workplace. But one of the things that we wanted to be sure to talk about is the importance of ERGs. And I know that many of you have had experience with employee resource groups, business resource groups, and their ability to provide a foundation and a network within an organization. And I'm hopeful that someone would be willing to talk to the importance of that in helping someone to find their place within a business.
I don't want to speak again if someone else wants to.
Spencer, would you like to take that?
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. I have an example to John's question, so work on that.
Okay, go ahead, Will, and then we'll hop to John's question.
Okay, well, I definitely think that ERGs play, or BRGs, depending on the company maybe that you work for, play a definite role and remains important. I think that it's important that we don't use it as an opportunity to just check a box. I think a lot of companies sometimes will do that because they need to meet, certain criteria that either set forth, but to really integrate and leverage the power of the voices within the ERGs to really help move the companies and agencies forward. for which they were created. So, you know, from my personal experience, I had the opportunity to create with a team that was led by Michael Gonzalez to actually create a Center for Diversity and Inclusion, which really tied in to become a sort of a hub, if you will, for all the ERGs to have a place to come and meet and talk and really feel like, you know, there was a sense of a core. And I do think that might be something that can and should be created with other companies. I think it signals and beacons out to the rest of the company, as well as to beyond the walls of the company, that what you stand for and what that mission and statement is going to be within that ERG, and just the diversity, inclusion, and equity, you know, division and area as a whole. So I definitely feel it's important, but I definitely know that it's top down. You know, you can have and you can create all the meeting spaces, and you can create all the ERGs you want, but if you don't have top-down leadership really behind that, really supporting that, you know, it can kind of be stagnant, and it will be just sort of in word only and not in action. And I think that I've seen that sometimes happen, and so it's important to really know that you've got the senior executives have your back on that. So my experience.
Yep. And I think you may have pointed this out, that when the different ERGs work together, that's when you really have the compounded aspect of so many people who have an authenticity to themselves and a network within themselves, bringing those unique qualities together for the betterment of the organization. So that's great.
And I think that is what a center can do, is because it creates a common ground for all of the different ERGs to kind of come together and find some solidarity there. Yeah.
Well, I hope that you were able to see in the comments there are a lot of kudos coming your way for your leadership with the ERGs at Hallmark, and Michael as well. So Spencer, I know that you had wanted to respond to an earlier question that was in the chat. I think someone had wanted to get some examples, and so I will turn it to you to address that question.
It looks like just more specific Asian examples. So I will say, like, in general, I've been in a many different situations where I have not been welcomed the very first time, but I tell them, hey, I'm going to keep showing up and you're going to like me more and more. And keep being uncomfortable until that becomes comfortable. Before I started my work with HRC and now with the DNC, I worked in Congress. I worked for Joyce Beatty, who is a United States representative from Ohio. But in Congress, we have ERGs as well for all of their employees. Not only do you have your congressional caucuses, but you have resource groups for all of the different employees that are there. A particular piece of legislation that we were looking to get bipartisan, not only bipartisan, but biracial, I guess, but across all different lines. We wanted to create a space in our hall that was all-encompassing. I approached the Congressional Asian Pacific Caucus, and they were kind of uneasy about talking about LGBTQ issues at first. They were uncomfortable the week after that, and they were kind of still hesitant a week after that. I will say it took kind of what Will was talking a little bit earlier, is it takes leadership. It takes someone who is willing to sit at that lunch table with you or sit down with you, for other people to say, okay, that's cool. Let's get around this. Maybe we should be part of the movement as well. And I had one particular lunch meeting that was in public. I got out of that lunch meeting not only a partner to help me with the AAPI group in general, But after that lunch meeting, we were able to really make something that's still there today, which I'm very proud of, that is kind of an all-encompassing ERG for specifically Black, Asian, and queer people. That is something that's still there. What I needed was I needed them to be able to put their name on paper, and they were very reluctant. And that is a particular instance where keep showing up, keep being persistent. I was able to have them kind of come around and build rapport with them.
Excellent. So I want to be sure that we have time to address this really important question from Alexander, who posed, how does being mixed, specifically Black and Asian, compound with being a gay man or being a queer person? I think that that's something probably all of our panelists can speak to. So Calvin, I'm going to throw it to you first.
Well, it can be very challenging. Not only the people are trying to figure out, okay, are you Black, are you Asian? But now you put in the mix, you're gay. So now not only are we categorizing those three different categories, but now are they stereotyping us as, oh, he's a Black gay man, or he's a Black Asian man. And I just tell them, before you knew I was gay, I was still the same person. I've learned that, I don't have to come out to everybody. It's not that me being gay does not define me as a person. It's part of my life. Yes. Me being Black is part of my life. Me being part Asian is part of my life, but just that one thing does not define me. It's all of those things that makes me who I am. And I'm proud of it. And once somebody sees that just because I come out and say, oh, yes, I'm gay, I'm Black, and I'm Asian. And by the way, I'm married to a white guy. So they see that I'm not scared. I'm not going to back down because I just told them that I was gay. So I try not to make it a big issue. I embrace it. I let them know that I embrace it. I try not to make it look like I'm embarrassed when I tell them I'm gay. I just try to make sure that I put my confidence up front to let them know that I'm not here to stereotype you, and I don't expect you to stereotype me because of my orientation. I just want to be accepted as a person, and in the workforce, I just want to be accepted for what I can contribute to the company, not because of who I am as a Black, Asian, gay man.
Yep. Spencer and Will, I'm interested how you handle that additional layer.
So just a little bit of background. So my dad, as you know, is Black, but he was also a minister. He pastored a large congregation in Atlanta, so big Black church. And then he was also military, so I was also a military brat. So my upbringing was, there was a lot of expectation from my parents placed on both my sister and myself to be kind of model kids. So, I was the one that was always, helping lead the youth, choir or the ushers organization within the church. I had to show up, all the time, and I had to act a certain way. So I ended up doing that to the point where I didn't even know who I really was. I always knew kind of in the back of my head, I think I'm gay, but I could never possibly, come out, because of my dad's role in the community, and then also the military. So there was, we came from a strict upbringing, so that was also in the house. So, I just put all that behind me until I actually became an adult and I moved out. So I was well into my 20s before I even thought to even crack the door, and I'll never forget, a friend of mine here in Kansas City years ago, when he met me, he's like, I think you might benefit from just, talking to somebody. And I was so offended, because I think, again, as a Black community, talking about therapy and, oh no, what are you talking about? We don't do that. So that was something else I stepped into, and that, I do believe that my life has definitely been guided, because everything that's happened has led me to the next thing, which has led me to the next thing. So meeting, my friend Mark and going to therapy, meeting Jeannie, 5 years of therapy, finally getting to the point where I could unpack and peel back, that is not me. This is actually me, and really started to own that. And part of this journey for me is continues to be, not being concerned with what others say, and not being concerned what my family, extended family, might think of me, because at the end of the day, they're not living my life. I'm living my life. So I don't hide it. And ever since I did officially sort of come out, I've never gone back into the closet. And, it took a while to finally work up to coming out to my family. But, once I did, it's like, it's done. And now I can go on living. And, it's the most freeing thing. So for me, it definitely improved as I kind of came into my own and kind of felt like I started to really own who I was. So, I think that there's still work to do actually within the Black community, because we don't talk about this, and we don't necessarily accept homosexuality. It really conflicts with a lot of the Christianity, and, and I had to kind of really go through a whole, kind of, I got to stop this, I got to rethink. So, while I definitely love and enjoy certain aspects of the Black church, I just know that it doesn't fully embrace me. So, I just have to find something that works for me. So, so that's just been my journey. I fully accept myself. I don't apologize for who I am, and I don't care, if people don't fully accept me. That's fine. There are plenty of other people who will, and you know what? That's who I want to connect with, and so that's just kind of been my philosophy.
Thank you. And then Spencer, I'll give you the final word on this question before we move on, if you want to add anything.
Oh, I would just say, every day we live, we're constantly disappointing somebody. That's it.
Well, all three of you, very insightful comments, especially on that last question. Before we wrap up, I want to just bring up two things. Throughout the thread of this conversation, we've heard the military come up a bit. Calvin, you talked about how the military was there for you when your mother passed. Will, you talked about growing up a military brat and what that was like as well. I'm interested to know, the military has been through, I guess, somewhat of an evolution in its acceptance of the LGBTQ plus community. At times, not really acknowledging or wanting to know someone's status and not allowing folks to live authentically. How has being connected to or being part of the military and that positioning that the military historically has had impacted you? and affected your identities and life?
Well, I'd like to answer first. You know, when I first joined the Army, I had a feeling. I was a late bloomer to realizing that I was gay. I knew in the back of my mind that I was gay, but that didn't influence me in what I was going to do with my life. But then once I got into the military, you know, they came up with "Don't ask, don't tell," and before that, I was just being myself. As far as a soldier is, I go to work, do my job, go to bed, wake up, and do the same thing again. But then once "Don't ask, don't tell" came around, then I realized I couldn't be my complete self in the Army, because the moment I tell somebody that I'm gay, then that's the end of my career. So for many years, while "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" was still active, I had to hide myself from people that I considered friends. And some of them I considered family because we were that close. But I tell you, the minute they repealed "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" and got rid of it, the first person I told was my commander. He's a really good friend to me. We actually still work together. He's now in the VA here in Kansas City, and when I told him, at first, when I was even considering telling him, I was scared. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know what the right moment was going to be, and but I knew I was going to have to tell him, just so that I can get it off my chest, and that way he can see the real me for me. And the minute I did tell him, a weight was lifted off my chest, off my shoulders, and he was like, "Okay, what's the big deal?" It wasn't the reaction. I mean, in the back of my mind, that's the reaction I was hoping for, but it wasn't the reaction I was expecting. But I'm so grateful that people in my life have always been placed in the right moments for me, so that when certain times arose for me to act upon, I always had the right people there to encourage me and help me grow and help me be a better person.
Thank you for that. And again, another great segue as we think about growth and how we can equip people with strategies maybe that parents can share with their children about being an advocate. What are some things that people can do to further celebrate the experience of intersectionality with the next generation, so that no one has to go through a questioning period about whether folks will accept their multiple identities? What would you all recommend?
Well,
Go ahead.
I can give you maybe a couple of things that would be an interesting concept. This kind of ties in with ERGs and BRGs, really thinking about how they can support each other. And maybe an idea or concept could be, as we're planning for, Black History Month or Asian American Heritage Month, finding ways that, these ERGs and BRGs can come together and create the events together, and really take that as a learning opportunity to really kind of connect, deepen the relationships, learn, and advocate. I think that the less that we can be in our silos within those, groups, the better the results can be. And really, when we talk about what those events can be, it's not just, let's celebrate Black History Month, but, are there events, are there cultural events that you can have within those opportunities to really go deeper, host conversations, host dialogues like this, where you create a safe space and can really deepen conversation. So that's one thought that I have off the top.
Very good.
Vanessa.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to say, as a parent, I wanted to bring this up. My daughter came out to me last month, and I was so happy that she felt so comfortable to tell me, but at the same time, I was kind of scared because I don't want her to go through any of the heartaches that I had to go through, and the stuff that I heard other people going through. So I always wanted to be supportive. So I just told her, I'm so very proud of you. I'm so happy for you. If there's anything that you ever need, or if you have any questions, please feel free to come to me and ask. If I don't know the answer, we'll find out together. I just wanted I wanted her to be sure that, yes, I'm gay. Yes, she's gay. And that it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something you should embrace.
Exactly. I was just going to add, as a parent and diversity and equity practitioner, that, a lot of times folks are questioning what is the appropriate age to begin to talk to kids about race and ethnicity. And there's no age that's really too young. We can have those conversations in many age appropriate ways and in a way that's not scary. I think the earlier we're having those conversations, the better, recognizing that kids are seeing difference from the moment they are able to see anything, and to be able to empower them to know that that difference is not anything wrong. It's just what makes all of us unique, and that can even extend beyond race to other diversities, sexual orientation, and beyond. So I would just encourage those among us who are parents to have those conversations, to interact with diverse friend circles, work colleagues, to really try to expose kids to a variety of folks with multiple identities so that they can see the greatness in the world, and all that, everyone has to offer with their uniqueness. So I haven't seen any additional questions come through the chat. So I know that we are coming upon our time. I don't know, Spencer, I didn't give you a last chance to answer that question. I don't know if you have anything you want to add, but.
Yeah, I would say, it's been great to see, especially this year. It's the last day of Pride. I'm really sad about it. Luckily here in our city, we're going to be doing it again in October, but seeing the support that other communities can have for one another. Someone in the chat earlier was bringing up the Hispanic community and how our stories, our cultural stories all make sense. And going back to ERGs, we have to ask ourselves, why do we have these ERGs? Why do we have these BRGs? Because we haven't always had a seat at the table. We've all are part of marginalized communities. And so finding that commonality and taking the time to learn about a different culture and maybe what you can do, or what they can do, or finding something beautiful together. I can think of celebrating Afro-Hispanic culture. And we have got a beautiful world out there, but understanding that we all are in these spaces because we haven't had a seat at the table is a bigger picture that we need to start asking ourselves. We have those groups to obviously cultivate and celebrate and push into leadership, people that look like us, but just understanding that we have those because people haven't always looked like us. or shared our experiences.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I thank all of you for your insights, your vulnerability, and your thoughts tonight. You've all added so much to what has been a great discussion, so much great information and fodder for additional thought. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our hosts and really want to thank NAAAP Pride again for having this event. It's been really an honor to be a part of it. So I believe someone from NAAAP Pride is going to come back on and close us out.
Yes, Vanessa, thank you so much for hosting such a great dialogue and conversation. And Spencer, Calvin, Will, thank you so much for just being so vulnerable and sharing your story. I know it's hard to share your story to a virtual audience. So first, I'll just a virtual round of applause to you all. Please join me. Everyone else, please join me in doing so. With that, one thing, of course, we hope that this isn't like a one and done type of conversation, that, everyone continues to self-reflect, self-learn, and really give other people opportunity to really amplify their voices and listen and empathize with them. And then, we, as some of the comments in the group chat suggest, our different communities, BIPOC communities are so, we have a lot of commonalities and a lot of similarities. So let's support each other and really amplify all of our voices, because we all grow together. So hopefully this conversation continues. As far as NAAAP Pride goes, we are a purely volunteer-driven organization. We love putting events on like this and really giving people the opportunity to learn and grow and share their stories. But we can't do it without your support, because we do it for you all. So please promote the NAAAP Pride program to your networks. And there is a QR code. If you scan that, it'll take you directly to a link to donate to NAAAP Pride, which we would very much appreciate, no matter how large or small a donation is. And we also operate really heavily on corporate sponsorships. So if there's an opportunity for any type of corporate sponsorship, we'd love to connect. And we really want it to be a win-win situation between your company and organization. So please feel free to reach out. And lastly, we have one of our NAAAP Pride programs is a Pride Talk podcast. And just some upcoming seasons, we have Dr. Kim Liu of NAAAP Miami and a member of our NAAAP Pride national team. She'll share her experiences. And then we also have Broadway and television star Kelly Leung upcoming in the Pride Talk podcast as well. So I encourage you all to give that a listen. But with that, thank you all so much again for taking time out of a Tuesday evening. Hope everyone stays safe and stay healthy, and feel free to connect, and you're always welcome to feedback and ideas, and we just love connecting with you all. So thank you again, and have a good rest of your day/evening.